He didn't take gold. He didn't steal a document. He reached for something older, something sacred, a portrait that had never left the palace walls, commissioned by the Queen herself. And moments before his departure, Donald Trump had it in his hands. No alarms, no headlines, just one man, in full ceremonial dress, stepping into the path of a private jet, not to argue, not to accuse, but to return a piece of the crown that had nearly vanished into silence. And what happened on that tarmac left even Trump speechless. Now, before we reveal the confrontation that stopped a former president cold, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Let's begin. The east vestibule of Buckingham Palace carried a quiet chill that morning, the kind that clung to marble before the sunlight found it. Outside, the sky hovered in a dull overcast, flattening the horizon into a soft grey blur. The long gallery, known as the Crown Vault Passage, had been sealed to the public. Velvet ropes marked its perimeter, and behind them, gloved conservators made careful final adjustments. At precisely 8:54 a.m., the inner courtyard echoed with the low rumble of a four-car convoy. The vehicles came to a smooth halt, engines purring once before silence returned. Moments later, footsteps emerged. Polished shoes on stone, briefcases, coats lifted against the wind. At the centre, Donald J. Trump. "Good morning, Mr. Trump," came the voice from the portico. It was King Charles III, his day coat immaculate, his tone warm but properly distant. "Your Majesty," Trump replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Always a pleasure." Inside the east vestibule, the air changed. Cooler, older. The scent of polished wood and oil paint hung faintly beneath the ornate plaster ceilings. The Crown's private vault gallery was not often opened for personal viewing, and almost never for diplomatic guests. The King led Trump toward a smaller piece at the far end, more intimate, less performed. "This one," Charles said, "was never intended for public halls. She commissioned it privately, a final portrait done in Balmoral, weeks before her passing." The painting showed Queen Elizabeth II seated at a writing desk in front of a window, her profile softly lit by natural Highland light. A delicate shawl draped across her shoulders. One hand held a fountain pen mid-thought, the other rested gently atop a sealed envelope. Behind her, the glass reflected the shape of her face, giving the piece its name, The Queen's Reflection at Balmoral. Trump tilted his head, his expression briefly sincere. "She looks alive in it," he said, almost quietly. The King didn't respond at first, then, "She would have liked that." A respectful pause. Then Trump added with a half-smile, "If it were mine, I'd hang it centre wall, no questions." Charles didn't laugh. "That's precisely why it isn't for sale." To the side, stationed near the ornate doorway, stood Sergeant Alaric Denham, tall, square-jawed, and completely still in the ceremonial red of the Coldstream Guards. 16 years in service. He'd stood silent at 5 royal funerals, and this ceremonial post inside a gallery was not a dismissal. It was a duty. He watched without watching, not the words, but the cadence, not the gestures, but the glances. Trump's gaze lingered on the portrait longer than the others had. Charles noticed. Denham noticed. And then the moment passed. A conservator approached. "Your Majesty, Lord Pendrake is ready in the west antechamber." The King gave Trump a polite nod. "I trust you'll enjoy the rest of the viewing." "Of course," Trump replied. "Always do." The King turned and left. The room returned to silence. Trump turned toward the painting again, stepping closer. A portrait like that doesn't just capture a queen, it keeps a piece of her. The gallery had fallen into a hush that felt older than silence. The King had left. The curators had moved on. Even the footman had been called away. Only 3 people remained: Donald Trump, his aide, and the Coldstream Guard at the far end, still as sculpture. Trump's aide tapped his phone, then looked up. "The schedule, sir. RAF Northolt is prepped for 11:15. Departure windows tight." Trump waved a hand. "We've got time." He stepped closer to the painting. This one, he said, voice low. They said it's never left the palace walls. Yes, sir, classified permanent sovereign property. Trump turned slowly. But they made a duplicate, didn't they? The aide paused. A facsimile for conservation insurance stored here on site. Trump nodded toward the wheeled packing crate against the wall. A slim, archival tube marked with both Royal Collection Trust and a barcode in faded red. It'd be a shame if the wrong one got loaded for inspection. The aide blinked. Sir, the protocol. I said inspection, Trump interrupted gently. She wanted me to have it. We spoke about it. Over tea, spring of 19. She said this portrait captured her legacy better than any headline. He turned fully now, voice firmer. She trusted me with things her cabinet never saw. This isn't theft. It's remembrance. At the far end, Sergeant Denham shifted his weight. No more than half a footfall, but enough to subtly reorient his body. His right hand moved slightly closer to the hilt of his ceremonial sword. Trump caught the motion. He didn't flinch. Instead, he gestured, and the aide obeyed. He stepped toward the packing crate, entered a code, and waited for the locks to release with a soft hiss. The portrait, in its full glass frame, was gently lifted and carried across the gallery floor. The case opened with a smooth hydraulic whir, and the painting slid into the foam-lined cradle with surgical care. The lid closed. The scanner lit green. To anyone watching, it would have looked like authorized logistics. To Denham, it looked like absence. Trump turned and smiled faintly toward the far corner. Carry on, soldier, he said. Just some housekeeping. Denham said nothing. He didn't move. But he had marked the room. Marked the shadow on the wall where the Queen's portrait had been, and he knew, as surely as he knew the weight of his rifle, that something sacred had just been removed without permission. 10 minutes passed. A new footman returned, clipboard in hand, ready to reset the logbook. He glanced up to note the placement of the Queen's portrait. But he froze mid-step. The painting was still there, or so it seemed. Same size, same hooks, but the light hit differently. The glass surface didn't catch the chandelier like it used to. Behind him, Sergeant Denham had already stepped forward. The footman looked at him, uncertain. Is that the original? Denham said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the nameplate, the small brass plaque that once read, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Balmoral Reflection, 2022. It was gone. Just an empty bracket screwed into the wood panel. Denham withdrew a small black radio. Post 7 to control, Gallery 2A. Painting appears substituted. Say again. Reflection portrait. Suspected replacement. Glass surface inconsistent. Plate missing. Copy. Remain on position. Denham's eyes shifted to the packing crate, now wheeled slightly out of place. The red indicator light had turned green. It had been opened and resealed. He turned toward the exit doors that led toward the lower courtyard. One of Trump's aides had passed that way moments earlier, case in hand, walking with deliberate nonchalance. The guard made no move to chase. Instead, he stepped to the painting still on the wall and tapped the lower right corner with a small silver stylus. The expected chime didn't respond. A copy. Near perfect, but not exact. Behind him, the gallery doors opened. Isabel Hargreaves, Senior Registrar for the Royal Collection, entered. Sergeant Denham? Yes, ma'am. The private secretary requested silent verification. Denham stepped aside. Hargreaves approached the frame, flashlight in hand. One pass confirmed it. It's the duplicate, she said softly. From the North Vault. Crate was resealed, Denham said. She pulled her mobile device and scanned the inventory code. Nothing. No digital movement, no barcode update. She looked at him. Do you know who took it? Yes. Are you certain? I watched the case move, and I watched who ordered it. Silence. Then Hargreaves gave a single nod. I'll notify the Crown Registrar. You do what you have to. Denham saluted, then turned toward the courtyard. He wasn't chasing a man. He was retrieving a monarch's last reflection. The rain had started again. That light, directionless kind that didn't fall so much as hang in the air. From the third-story balcony, Buckingham's interior courtyard stretched in neat symmetry. Sergeant Alaric Denham stepped into the open corridor. Below him, 3 black SUVs idled by the Sovereign's gate, windows fogged from the heat within. Trump was preparing to leave. Denham descended the stone staircase in crisp, soundless cadence. He keyed his radio. Post 7, object confirmed substituted. Original removed. Transfer initiated without log. Confirm designation. 82QB, Balmoral reflection. Subject is mobile, courtyard position. Copy. Visual containment only. Trump emerged from the interior hallway. A navy trench coat rested over his shoulders. 2 aides flanked him, one holding the leather travel case, long, cylindrical, gripped at the midpoint. Not slung, not holstered, clutched. Denham recognized the posture. It was how men carried things they didn't want inspected. The aide opened the SUV trunk. The case went in, the door shut. The convoy pulled forward and stopped, awaiting clearance. Denham pivoted and walked through a service corridor, emerging near the ambassador's gate. Just as the palace marshal raised a hand to signal stop and proceed, Denham stepped forward. The marshal's hand faltered. Trump, seated in the rear, leaned toward the window. He saw Denham. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Trump's expression shifted. Denham stepped closer to the SUV. He didn't reach for the door. He simply stood, 10 feet from the vehicle, directly in its path. To any tourist peering through the palace gate, he looked like just another ceremonial sentry. But to those inside the car, it was clear. He wasn't blocking a lane. He was drawing a line. Rain darkened the SUV's roof in small, even patterns. Inside, Trump watched the guard for a long moment. The engine idled low. The final security officer held a digital clipboard and waited. But the marshal hadn't moved, because Denham hadn't. He now stood 4 paces into the gate's path, gloved hands behind his back, ceremonial pike anchored to the stone. Not aggressive, but unmistakable. It was a live physical pause, a rare but authorized move, executed only when a silent possession conflict was suspected. The driver lowered his window. "Sir, we've been flagged." Trump rolled his own window down halfway. "Officer," he called out, "what's the issue here?" Denham's reply was calm. "The item in your trunk was not cleared through the royal registrar." Trump smiled faintly. "It's a copy, a harmless keepsake. The king and I spoke about it." "No record of such agreement exists," Denham replied. "Not everything's written down," Trump said, his tone tightening. "This was personal. The original painting is missing from its secure frame. The duplicate remains in storage. The one you have is catalogued sovereign property." Trump leaned back and closed the window. His aide shifted uneasily. The marshal approached the driver's side door and waited. Denham stepped forward and addressed him directly. "By order of Palace Custodial Protocol, I am exercising a containment hold under Article 7, Section C." The marshal stepped back. After a beat, Trump opened the door. Rain dotted his lapel. He stepped out slowly, facing Denham directly. "You're just a guard," he said, voice low. "You don't know the weight of what you're interfering with." "I know the rules," Trump scoffed. "So do I. This is protected under diplomatic privilege. You're making a mistake." Denham said nothing. Trump walked to the trunk and tapped it. His aide popped it open. The case sat there, sleek, rain-beaded, ordinary. Denham took 1 step closer. "No touch authorization," Trump warned. "I'm not here to touch it," Denham replied. "I'm here to stop it from leaving until it's cleared." "You're overstepping. I'm standing exactly where I'm assigned." Their words fell into silence. Then Denham added, "You're at the threshold. What crosses now is not just luggage, it's legacy." Trump stared at him. then closed the trunk. "I'll take it up with the king." "You already did," Denham answered, "and you left the room without it." A flicker, barely visible. Trump climbed back into the vehicle. The convoy didn't move, not until the case was pulled and the departure marked incomplete. The roads between Buckingham Palace and RAF Northolt cut through discreet corridors of the city. The convoy rolled in silence, its route pre-cleared. Inside an unmarked vehicle, Sergeant Alaric Denham sat upright, a folded clearance file in his lap. Next to him sat a navy folder stamped with the royal household emblem. Inside, a live intervention writ enacted under the Crown Property Preservation Act. His radio hissed. "Convoy has arrived at Perimeter Gate, Northolt. Departure estimated at 11:17. 11:03. Time enough? Barely." The car stopped near the hangar. Denham stepped out, unhurried. His cap remained in the vehicle, replaced by a black beret. He began to walk, alone. Across the tarmac, aides had offloaded the luggage. The leather case had been handed to a British aviation liaison who held a clipboard, unaware of what he carried. Denham continued walking, each step silent, the wet ground dulling his stride. But his movement cut through the space like a fault line. Airport police turned. One began to raise a hand, then lowered it. The insignia on Denham's breast overruled their orders. He didn't walk toward the plane. He walked into its path. Trump was at the base of the stairs when he noticed. He turned, saw the red tunic under the black overcoat, saw the guard, stopped moving. Control's voice returned. "Final call. If item not retrieved in 90 seconds, aircraft departure will default to sealed manifest." Denham pressed once on the mic. "Object is still in play. Hold departure." He pulled out the sealed intervention writ and held it at his side. Trump, flanked by aides, approached slowly. The aide carrying the case stopped. "Sir?" Trump didn't answer right away. "I could make this very public," Trump said, voice even. "This isn't theft. This is diplomacy, legacy. Then legacy must pass through the proper hands. This is between me and the king." "It became between you and the crown," Denham replied, "when the wall was left bare." Trump's mouth tightened. Behind him, the aircraft's engines whined. The doorway light blinked, waiting. "You think you're protecting a painting," Trump said. "I'm protecting a promise." Trump's aide stepped forward and handed the case directly to Denham without a word. Denham took it, opened the flap, and checked the interior. Inside, the Queen's reflection, glass intact, seal unbroken. He closed the case, nodded once, turned, and walked back across the tarmac, not quickly, not triumphantly, but with the exact same pace he had arrived. The rain had steadied. Denham held the sealed case with both gloved hands, cradled not like evidence but like memory. Behind him, Trump still lingered at the stairs. He hadn't boarded. Trump moved forward a step. "You're creating a scene." Denham said nothing. "I was offered that painting. The king said I could take a copy. I decided the original was more meaningful." Denham's gaze didn't shift. Trump glanced around. No one moved to stop the guard. "You know I could go public with this. Twist it. Say you embarrassed the crown." Still nothing. "Think about your future." Denham's voice came low and level. "The Queen's seal is still on this canvas. That means it belongs here. Not in a suitcase, not on a jet." Trump's shoulders tensed. "She wanted me to have it." Denham didn't argue. He simply replied, "Then it would have been written down." That landed. Trump stepped back. He looked toward the jet, the open door, the silent crew. He looked back at Denham. "Do you understand what you're doing? This sets a tone, headlines, repercussions. Then I'll bear it." Denham took one step closer, and then he saluted. Not to Trump, to the case. A clean, perfect motion, delivered with reverence. Trump's mouth opened slightly, then closed. For a long moment, the two men simply stood there. Then Trump turned and walked up the stairs. No words, no backward glance. The door sealed behind him. Denham exhaled once. shifted the case under one arm, and walked back toward the perimeter. The drive back to Buckingham was silent, just a single unmarked vehicle moving through London's late morning quiet. Inside, Sergeant Alaric Denham sat upright. The case rested across his lap, strapped in with the seatbelt. His gloved hand remained fixed to the side handle. At the palace gates, no questions were asked. The guards saw the crest, saw Denham's uniform, and opened the entrance. The car rolled to a stop beneath the eastern colonnade. Denham stepped out, case in hand. Inside, the corridors had resumed their ordinary rhythm. Denham walked to the registrar's office. A private conservator waited with white gloves and a scanner. They opened the case in silence. The portrait emerged, still secured. When lifted, it caught a shaft of filtered light, the same light that had struck it hours earlier. The seal was intact, the backing unmarked, the glass uncracked. But there, in the bottom corner, faintly visible, a smudge, the outline of a thumbprint. "Clean it?" the conservator asked. "No," Denham said. "Let it stay for now." The frame was returned to its holding bracket. A clerk entered a note. 82 QB, re-verified, custody restored, re-hung under supervision. Moments later, Denham stepped into the study. The king was there, standing by the tall window, one hand resting on the desk. He turned when Denham entered. "Was it stopped?" Denham gave a single nod. "At the Tarmac. Returned without damage." The king exhaled. Not relief, recognition. Was there confrontation? "A moment," Denham said carefully, "but it didn't escalate." The king stepped forward, opened the case, and looked down at the portrait. He studied it for a long time. "She always said that legacy doesn't live in statues or speeches. It lives in the hands of those who guard it." He looked up. "You've done her proud, Sergeant." Denham didn't reply. He simply nodded once and turned to go. Outside, the rain had finally slowed to a whisper. At precisely 09:30, the east vestibule reopened. The ropes had been reset. The public was allowed into the Crown Gallery for the first tour of the day. No one was told what had nearly gone missing. A light breeze drifted through the open windows. Sunlight slipped through at an angle, glancing off the gilt frames. Among the visitors was a school group, blue blazers, hands clasped behind backs, whispering with hushed reverence. A teacher pointed up at various portraits. But when they reached the end of the room, a hush settled without needing to be asked for. There she was, the Queen's reflection at Balmoral, returned, undisturbed, as if it had never moved. And yet, something was different. The glass caught the light with its usual softness, but those who looked closely might have noticed the faintest mark in the lower corner. A cleaned smudge, almost invisible. A trace of interruption. Sergeant Alaric Denham stood at the end of the corridor, positioned near the side column. His boots stood precisely on the marble seam. His white gloves were folded neatly behind his back. To the children, he was just another guard. To the staff, he was the reason the room felt whole again. As the visitors passed, a young girl looked back once. She simply saw the painting, and the man who stood near it, silent. She leaned toward her teacher and whispered, "He looks like he's guarding her." And she wasn't wrong. Should the former president have been allowed to keep the painting as a personal token, a gesture of private trust between two world leaders? Or was Sergeant Denham right to intervene, even if it meant quietly standing against someone more powerful than him? Tell us what you think in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe that some things, legacy, memory, duty, should never be taken without permission, hit that like button, subscribe with the bell icon turned on, and share this video with someone who still believes in quiet honor. More true-to-life stories from inside the Royal Guard's silent world are appearing on your screen right now. Watch them next, and we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, with a brand new one.